Good morning, members, and welcome to this meeting of the Nithsdale Area Committee, which is being live streamed and recorded. The recording will be made available on the Council website for public listening. Members may notice that when calling members to speak, I will refer to them formally and using their title, for example, Councillor Smith, so that it is clear who are councillors and who, by the process of elimination, are officers. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you are not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute, and if you are in the hall, you can do this on your iPhone or iPad. Please don't repeat contributions already made by other members, and no material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time or write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin the meeting, so we can keep track on whether the meeting is quorate. All members should speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions, and when referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. Tracy, can you provide the sedgerant indicating who's participating remotely and any apologies, please?
Good morning, Chair. Morning, members. We've got 17 members present in total, 7 members present in person at the Council HQ, being the Chair, the Vice Chair, Councillor Beretti, Councillor John Campbell, Councillor Dorward, Councillor Slater, Councillor Stitt, and we have 10 members present on Microsoft Teams, being Councillor Blake, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Hislop, Councillor Malcolm Johnson, Councillor Jordan, Councillor Little, Councillor Lowe, Councillor Stevenson, Councillor Walters, and we have Jade Kirkpatrick on Teams from the Youth Council. I've got 3 members not present at the start of the meeting, being Councillor Wood, and 2 members not present at the start, Councillor Wood, and we've got Joe Goldsworthy from the Youth Council, should be joining us a bit later. And I've got 2 apologies, one from Councillor Bell and one from Lucy Wogg, our Youth Councillor. Thanks, Chair.
I confirm my agreement to the participation of members named as participating remotely. Do members have any declaration of interest? Do members have any statement of connection or declaration of interest to declare, based on the definition, statement of connection? For transparency reasons, members may wish to make a public statement. Declaration of interest, members would now require to leave the meeting for that item. Do we have any declarations? Thank you. We will now move to the minutes of the previous meeting of the 8th of May. Are we happy to note the minutes? Thank you. Councillor Walters, would you like to speak?
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, I was a bit slow getting going there. I just wanted to make a statement of connection for item 11 in that I have spoken to one of the applicants because they're in my ward, but it's not strong enough for me to leave the meeting at that moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walters. We will now move. Our first report is the annual Scottish Fire and Rescue Service Performance Report. Now, I'm sure members will be reassured to read that overall the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service has performed well in key priority areas within Dumfries and Galloway during the period, and that this is reflected in the disaggregated data specific to the Nithsdale area. I was pleased to see the number of home fire safety visits that have taken place for some of our most vulnerable members of the community. Kevin McCartney Station Commander is in the hall to answer any member questions or address any member comments. Do we have any comments? Councillor Barretti?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just looking for the page that reflects the retained firemen and volumes. I noticed that Sanker is about 64% on first call. Is that looks as if it's going down a wee bit since the last time? Is there a reason?
Yeah, thanks for your question, Councillor. Reported availability within the report for Sanker is actually 76%. And we're pleased to say that since the report went out, the establishment level has gone up to 12 at Sanker. I actually run report for between June and August, and we're up 12% since the figures were reported. That's due to recruitment and people coming out through the BA phase, so they're now able to respond operationally as well. So the figures are 76% with the establishment level of 12 at Sanker Station.
Does that help, Councillor Barretti?
Yeah, that's fine. I also, in passing, heard that you might be there are new recruits starting in the region in Sanker. Is that right?
Yes, so since the report, the figures are up to 12 at Sanker, which is great news. The availability has gone up. We've actually taken a transfer in from another location within Scotland, which has further helped the availability. And we've actually got another one on a BA course this week and next week. And once they pass out in the course, that will further increase the availability of the appliance.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Dorward?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Good morning, officers. Thank you for the report. Really interesting reading. A couple of questions, if I may. 3.7 on page 23, road safety. I'll let you find the page first. It's maybe slightly reassuring to know that the number of road traffic collisions attended were the same as last year. It's not great that there are any at all, but it's good perhaps they haven't gone up. What isn't perhaps as good is you've noted there's an increase in the number of casualties from 7 to 9 and attended more multi-vehicle and or multi-casualty incidents, which have sadly resulted in 1 fatality and 9 serious injuries requiring hospital treatment. Now, it's got further analysis shows no patterns or trends at specific locations, although the majority of incidents occurred on A roads within the district. So A roads are easier to navigate, I think, than the B roads in Dumfries and Galloway. Sometimes the A roads are challenging to navigate as well, you could say. Is there been anything working with other emergency services in terms of speeding, in terms of careless driving that have caused these accidents and the unfortunate fatality? And second question, if I may, Chair, I'll ask it at the same time. Staffing 3.12, page 25. It's good to see that staffing levels in terms of retained firefighters are up, but in terms of the McLeod judgment, has that affected recruitment, retention and leaving early? So in terms of experience, is that affecting how many experienced firefighters you have across the region? And in terms of new recruitment, is there a change in how people view firefighting as a career or a career alongside another career in terms of how long they stay? Given the pension rules and the change to that. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. Kevin, can I pass that over to you? Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for your question. In regard to your first question, the road safety, I think it's a national trend that more people are travelling in the same car, and unfortunately when there is an accident, more people are involved in the aftermath. We have worked with young people through the Road Safety Partnership. We've actually got a big event coming up at Park Farm this weekend. We're working with the Road Safety Partnership with the police, and we've got other partners such as Nithsdale driver training that we've got on board to work really hard to engage with people within the region, but it's specifically young drivers. We've been out to S6 pupils. We've got VR headsets where we try and educate them just as they get in the cars and they learn to drive, to make them aware of the dangers, and hopefully that will go some way to reducing the incidents that we see within the region. Your second question, the recruitment as a whole, I'm happy to say that the whole-time station at Dumfries is working at 50 just now, which is the target operating model. The MacLeod judgment fortunately hasn't had a knock-on effect within the retained duty system, but we're still working hard to recruit and retain within the region. Like I said earlier, we're pleased to say that the establishment level is up at Sanker. We actually had a recruitment event at Thornhill last night, and we've got another one planned for the end of the month. And Dumfries retained, or it is looking healthy just now, with it sitting at full establishment as well.
Thank you. Does that answer your questions, Councillor Dorward?
It does, Chair, and it's reassuring to know that there's a lot of work going in to promote safe driving and driving awareness, not just in young people, I hasten to add. I think it's across the whole demographic, so I wouldn't vilify or single out young people, specifically, but it's great that work is ongoing with that demographic to make them aware, because they're probably new drivers and things in terms of road safety. Maybe something to do, we need to maybe improve the roads in Dumfries and Galloway as well. And in terms of retained and whole-time firefighters, that's reassuring to know as well, because it's something we don't want to, I know it's a challenge for the service down here, and I can't see it because it's a challenge for the service down here, but you seem to be doing a really good job, so keep it up. That's brilliant. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Provost. When you talk about recruitment, I remember when I was in the fire service in Sanker, if you weren't within 100 years of the fire station, you didn't make the appliance. Are you confident that, although you've got recruitments in place, that you can get the appliance to the door quick enough to be effective in the event of a fire? Because some of the current, and I suppose it'll be the same across the region, recruits, their workplace or their home is quite a distance from the fire station. And it is a concern that if you don't get the fire appliance to the door quickly enough, you'll know as effective as you really could and should be. So I'm just asking if you're confident that that's still all right. And a couple of minor things that are bothering me. One is in page 38, 39. It seems that we've now changed the description of the information into regions, for example, Mid and Upper Nithsdale. It really doesn't help, because if elected members, and Councillor Dorward touching it, if we're concerned about road safety, we really need to know where these issues are. There are 5 in my ward, but they could all be happening in the same place in Thornhill. But we don't know that if we don't get it broken down into individual stations. And the last thing on page 58, you feature an interesting event, the Extreme E. It took place in Kirkconnell, and Kirkconnell folk are quite proud of that. And you've described it as being in Sanker. You might as well say it's Mid and Upper Nithsdale, but it's better if you're doing a report like this that members know the location of these things, because it is of interest to all members. Thanks, gentlemen.
Okay, thanks for your questions, Councillor. First of all, I'll talk about availability and the response times. So we did talk about the recruitment and the retention of on-call firefighters, which is a challenge. We work really hard when we're looking for new recruits, and when people present themselves to the station, we carry out what we call a suitability discussion. So first and foremost, we will find out where their home address is, where their employer is if they're responding during the day, and what the response times are likely to be. And we will still stipulate that that needs to be within 5 and 8 minutes. So, and that is monitored. So if they're not available to respond within that time, we would deem them unsuitable. And that is done at the very start of the process. Down to the reporting and the observations there, as far as I'm aware, that the reporting has always been done by ward, but if there are specific items that apply to certain stations or that we notice trends within a station area, that would be specifically mentioned within my report. And the Extreme E event, I apologise, that's maybe something that we've put in. I believe it took place at Glen Mucklock Open Cast Mine, so I don't know if that's sort of halfway between Kirkconnell and Sanker, or it is on Kirkconnell's ground, but that is still covered by Sanker station area, which is why it's unfortunately gone down on Sanker, because I know that Sanker station went for a familiarisation visit and were there for part of the event taking place.
Just a couple of things. When you say response time, do you mean when a firefighter, routine firefighter, leaves his or her home, or do you mean between the time of the alert and when that individual gets to the fire station? Because there's quite a difference between responding and actually getting in the door.
The response time would be from the minute their pager goes off to them getting to the station.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. I still believe, though, that for our benefit, you must have the data. It wouldn't be difficult. You do stations, because Councillor Brighter referred to it. There's information on the Sanker and Thornhill stations individually in the report. And I would have thought the same thing would have been dead simple to do right across the report. But thanks, Provost. Thank you.
Thank you. Jade Kirkpatrick.
Hello. I've got a question for the fire officers. You mentioned young people in your earlier answer when talking about road traffic accidents. How many of these accidents involve young people?
Thank you, Jade. Kevin, can you any help on that? Thank you.
For the purposes of the report, and because there have been so few incidents, we haven't gone into specifics and gone into breaking it down to age categories. But if that was something that was required, that I don't have the figures to hand for the number of people and their ages, that could be supplied.
Thank you, Kevin. Does that help, Jade?
Yeah, that helps, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thanks for the report. This is probably a general question regarding road safety. A lot of the road signs are in poor condition, I must admit, especially around the town. Keep left, things like that. Some are broken, some are not there at all where they should be there. I just wondered what your feelings were on that as regarding road safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. I don't really think this comes into the performance report. Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Provost, for letting me in. It's on page 61. There's discussion of the Boys to Men mentoring that's been carried out with Lockerbie Academy. And I did note that there was a presentation at the Education Inclusion Festival. Now, I think this is an absolutely fantastic thing. Is there any way that, was there any uptake from some of the Dumfries schools to roll this out there? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Kevin, do you have any information on that being rolled out?
Again, thanks for your question. I don't have any further information about that being rolled out to a further audience, but again, we can find out from the Community Action Team and get back to you with further details.
Thank you, Kevin. Is that all right, Councillor Stevenson, if we get back to you on that?
Yeah, that's great, and I'll pick up with education as well. Do you know, I think it's fantastic, and it's one thing we always say about our children is sometimes they don't get to see role models in that leadership role, as you know, at that ground level. And we know sometimes they go for role models on YouTube and all the rest, but it's great to see somebody in the community. So I'm really supportive of that, and well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Do we have any further comments or questions? Don't seem to have any further, so we'll now move to the recommendations. Members are asked to scrutinise the performance report for Nithsdale from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service for the period the 1st of April 2023, 31st of March 2024, as detailed in the appendices. Thank you. Do we have... Thank you. Thank you, Kevin, for your attendance here today. Thank you. We will now move to item 5, and our next performance report is from the Economy and Development. Now, this report covers performance from the 1st of April 2024 to the 31st of March 2024. As always, this report covers a range of services and projects that are vital to helping our communities. There is a great deal of detail here that members will be very interested in. We have the local place plans and the Borderlands place plans, the local housing strategy, the old school at Thornhill, Let's Get Sporty, Mid-Steeple Quarter, Dumfries Cars, Solway Coast and the Marine Project, and the Core Path update. Now, I'm sure members will have questions and comments, so I'll open the floor right away. And we have Jamie Little and Leslie Annan are on Teams to answer any member questions or address any member comments. Do we have any comments? Councillor Walters?
All right, just having a connection problem there. Thanks for the report. Like you said, there's plenty of interesting detail there. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of, one of them on page 68, which is about the Borderlands Natural Capital Programme. I just wondered if I could get a bit more clarity on what the on-farm plans integrated with nature is, because it's not a programme or a process that I've come across before. I just wondered how it was going to be rolled out in Dumfries and Galloway. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Jamie, can you take that, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Walters. That's one I'll need to take away and discuss with relevant officers and come back to you with an update. I'm not involved in that project, but happy to seek an update from relevant officers.
Thank you, Jamie. Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. Again, thank you for the report, which makes interesting reading. One thing you mentioned, Chair, was the Let's Get Sporty as being a significant achievement, and it is. But concerningly, the Regeneration Capital Grant Fund, this is on page 67, 4.6.3, RCGF Stage 2 application for 1.382 million was submitted on the 10th of November 2023. However, DGC received an update in March 2024 that the RGF panel had not met to consider the project, and the RGF fund had been paused. Now, the RGF panel, as I understand it, consists of COSLA, local authorities and the Scottish Government. This is concerning. So the RGF fund had been paused, so we can't continue with this, meaning that no new projects would receive funding in 2024-25. The Council awaits further updates from the Scottish Government regarding the programme. Can I ask that rather than sitting waiting, that we do something proactive and actually write to Scottish Government and ask when we're going to get an update on this programme, because we can't do anything without funding, and if the funding isn't there, then we need to know why and when we're going to get it. Funding's been paused, but there doesn't seem to be anything in the report. Perhaps one of the officers can supply an answer to that. But that's quite concerning to me, given the fact that we are depending on that money to take things forward. So that's one question. And the second question is on page 65, 4.6.1.3, about the Housing Emergency Action Plan. So what it does say, I know it's broader than Nithsdale, but it is in the report. So what it does say is that members have requested that council officers work collaboratively with partner organisations to develop a housing emergency action plan. There's no timescales for that. What it would be useful to know is what are the timescales to get that produced, and how is the reduction in the budget of 5.1 million from 20.524 million to 15.529 million for 24-25 going to affect that? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. Jamie, can you take the Let's Get Sporty and also the funding? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Dorward. So in terms of the Regeneration Capital Grant Fund, I'm not directly involved with the Let's Get Sporty project, but I am aware that through Scottish budget announcements, the Regeneration Capital Grant Fund has not been allocated any support for 24-25. It's a similar position with the Vacant and Derelict Land Investment Programme. We will certainly look to take that up with the Scottish Government following this meeting. I'm sure officers within economic development are in regular engagement with the relevant people at the Scottish Government, but I'll also ensure that that's done and members are given an update. In terms of the timescales for the Housing Emergency Action Plan, the first meeting of the stakeholder groups coming up at the end of September, we pulled together relevant stakeholders to start this piece of work. I myself am also engaging with colleagues from across Scotland, and other local authorities have also taken the position of declaring a housing emergency. The number is now at 11 local authorities, and I'm sure members will be aware that's also a national position now declared by the Scottish Government. The intention is to come back to the newly formed Tackling Poverty, Inequalities and Housing Subcommittee at the start of 2025 with a draft action plan for members' consideration. In terms of the reduction in funding through the Affordable Housing Supply Programme, £5 million roughly does have a significant impact. We're looking at around about a quarter of the budget. We are working very closely with colleagues from across the registered social landlord development sector to try and maximise the availability of funding. The Scottish Government wrote to us yesterday to advise that a further £220,000 had been allocated to the region, so that figure has slightly increased, although it does not mitigate the reduction so far. Unfortunately, the position is that it will impact significantly on the development of affordable housing. The Strategic Housing Investment Plan report that was presented to Economy and Resources Committee last week highlighted that we're also now in a position of not having clarity about future funding availability, and that is going to have a more significant impact on the delivery of future projects. Projects that are on the ground right now or about to go on site are probably going to be okay, we would suspect, and we feel that that's okay, but there is a significant concern regarding the delivery of future affordable housing plans, and we will keep members updated through both the Economy and Resources Committee and the newly formed subcommittee that I mentioned earlier.
Thank you, Jamie. Does that help, Councillor Dorward?
It's an answer. It doesn't help, but it doesn't help folk wanting a house in Dumfries and Galloway. But what Jamie was saying, that's extremely helpful, Jamie, and I appreciate the update and the fact we'll take the funding issues forward with Scottish Government. So effectively, if we're looking at, if I can respond, Chair, page 65, 4.6.1.5, several sites, this is about Nithsdale, several sites are at various stages of development that lie within the Nithsdale area. If things aren't in development, it doesn't sound likely they're going to be in development for the foreseeable future until we have clarity about funding. Is that a reasonable statement to make? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. So in terms of the future projects listed there for Nithsdale, We are concerned about the future deliverability of those, and we're working very closely with the partner organisations to try and maximise the delivery of these projects in particular. We still await further clarity regarding future funding levels. We're basing the current planning over the next 5 years on a reducing funding allocation based on 80% for next year, 60% of the current budget for the following year, and 40%, which does give great concern. And obviously to the registered social landlords who are having to put their own money into these projects as well, they have significant concerns about the viability of their investments at this stage. As mentioned, we will come back with further detail to elected members, and it will also be a significant element of the Housing Emergency Action Plan. But we are doing, as officers within the council, everything we can within our powers to try and maximise the delivery of affordable homes in the region.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Councillor Dorward. And that will be taken forward as an action to contact the Scottish Government regarding the funding for Let's Get Sporty. Thank you. Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Provost. Page 69, 4.6.11.1, a belated statement of connection. I am Chairman of Sanker Enterprise Company. So anytime Sanker Enterprise Company appears in this report, you'll know that I have a connection with them. And I just want to place on record my thanks to the Countryside Access team for their support and continued working with the Enterprise Company to improve access in the Sanker and Midden Upper Nithsdale area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Stevenson. We'll move forward with Councillor Slater, and we'll come back to Councillor Stevenson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's on page 67. It's 4.6.4. It's about the mid-steeple quarter. And regarding the time span that this is taken, there was something here at the end of March. This is now September. And I believe they have no funding left to do this work. And at the moment, as I've said at a previous meeting, these flats are costing approximately £1 million each. So maybe Jamie could maybe answer that, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. Jamie, can you help with this one? Thank you.
Yeah, so the Economy and Infrastructure Committee last week agreed to allocate further funding to support the Mid-Steeple Quarter project, and that was on the basis of South Scotland Enterprise also agreeing to allocate additional funding. Council officers are working very closely with the Mid-Steeple Quarter to try and get this one to completion, which we understand is imminent, and we hope that the flats are available for allocation during October of this year. In terms of the cost at £1 million per flat that was referred to there, the overall costs for the development are in the region of £7 to £8 million. I don't have precise figures right here in front of me, and it does include 7 flats as part of the development, but there is also enterprise space on the ground floor. So it's a mixed development, and not the entirety of the costs are being met specifically for the flats. There is funding from the Regeneration Capital Grant Fund that cannot be used for flats, and that is going into the enterprise space on the ground floor.
Thank you, Jamie.
Okay.
Does that help answer your question, Councillor Slater?
Well,
or
yes,
help?
yes and no, really. The cost of the flats, although you say there's enterprise units below, there's a number of units that has been purchased and they're still lying empty. I'm a great believer if you've got the property initially, you should have done something with maybe a smaller project first instead of going into such a large project. And now they're struggling for money, and these flats, if you take the workshop off the cost, you're still talking probably £900,000 a flat. And also the rent of the flats, what's the return on that amount of money? Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. Jamie, do you have any answers to that, or do you want to take it on offline later? Thank you.
Happy just to advise that in terms of the business plan for the project at the Bakers Oven, the intention is that they are able to more than cover their costs from the income generated from the flats and also from the enterprise space. This is obviously being led by Dumfries High Street Limited, who are out with the council, but their business plan does also aim to enable them to be able to develop the other buildings within their ownership at the Mid-Steeple Quarter.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Councillor Slater. Come back, Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Provost, for letting me in. It's just really a statement. You know, when I look through the housing within this paper, there's so much of it in my ward that's still to be developed, and you know, there's been quite a lot of buildings demolished on the basis that they'd be replaced. And I'm looking at the Lochside regeneration project, which we know is going to take a number of years, but I now really worry how much of this we could actually now deliver, which, you know, I'm a councillor for North West. It's always going to be something I'll say, you know, my ward deserves so much better than this, and I imagine there's a lot of councillors feel the same about the housing in their ward, and especially when we look at things like College Road in Dumfries. The amount of houses have still to be confirmed, so it's obviously at a very early stage, but it involves the Adult Health and Social Care Partnership. Now, these houses are needed desperately, and more of those houses will be needed as part of the Lochside Collaborative. And I just really, really worry now with the reduction in funding how much of this will actually be delivered. So I have huge concerns about this, especially as the council that brought forward the emergency housing motion to full council last time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson, and I think we all share those concerns. Jamie, do you have any input you would like to put into that statement? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Stevenson. So in terms of College Road, the numbers to be confirmed on the basis of trying to find a deliverable model. You recognise there also the challenging financing around projects going forward. And these will be, these certainly intended to be very high specification properties to meet particular needs for people that we're trying to bring back into the region who are in very costly out of region placements at this time. The numbers to be confirmed are on the basis of trying to get exactly the right mix of properties that are available for residents. We will absolutely clarify the numbers as soon as we're able to. In terms of overall delivery and Lochside, there is going to be very challenging in the future if the funding is not available to meet all the council priorities around the delivery of affordable housing, and it's expected that there will be some tough decisions to make, but we are working and lobbying the Scottish Government to try and ensure that we can maximise the funding available for Dumfries and Galloway.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Hislop.
Thank you, Chair. In line with that, Jamie, do you think that we'll see the bigger sites being developed because they'll be more cost effective than the actual smaller sites? I know in my ward we've a proposal coming forward in a phased plan at Catherinefield Farm. Do you see that being more attractive and therefore other areas will miss out, like Councillor Stevenson's area, because it's a smaller scheme, whereas it's easier to do a bigger scheme? And is there any discussions on that front coming forward from the developers?
Thanks, Councillor Hislop. So in terms of the assessment of what will be deliverable in the future, the reality is that, as you've mentioned, large-scale sites are far more cost-effective and more straightforward to deliver, and they will help to maximise the investment available for the region. However, it will be the council that really sets the forward plan for the affordable housing supply programme in Dumfries and Galloway. And there will, as I mentioned before, there will be some very challenging decisions and assessments to be made going forward. But strategically, the council has set out a position where it does aim to try and deliver all these objectives It's not going to be possible to deliver every single project that we're highlighting today. There's no doubt about that. But the council will be the one who steers the registered social landlords in the direction that we wish affordable housing to go down. And we certainly do not want to take our eye off some of the smaller projects, which we recognise will have just as significant a strategic benefit for the area as some of the large-scale projects.
Thank you, Jamie. Does that help, Ivor? Councillor Hislop?
Yeah, fine, thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any further comments or questions? We'll now move to recommendations. Members are asked to review the overall summary of performance for the Nithsdale area from the 1st of April 23 to the 31st of March 24, as set out in paragraphs 4.3 and 4.4 and the appendix. Consider the area-based achievements and developments as detailed in the key achievements section of this report, paragraphs 4.6.1 to 4.6.12, and consider any aspects of performance to be referred to the relevant service committees. Do we have considered and reviewed? Thank you. We'll now move to item 6. We now turn to the annual assessment for the Roads and Infrastructure Service Plan for 23 to 24. I note in the report that the Council have recently appointed Turner and Townsend to support the flood risk management team develop the White Sands project, and Duncan MacDonald is on Teams to answer any member questions or address any member comments. Members, do we have any comments? Councillor Dorward.
Thanks, Chair. A very tedious reminder about White Sands Flood Protection Scheme. And I know that we are not drawing down any money from Scottish Government this year, which is reassuring given that they've taken the money from the budget for flood protection schemes to use for the black hole in the economy. But can we have reassurance from Scottish Government that next year, if we do think of drawing down money, that we actually will get it from Scottish Government for the White Sands Flood Protection Scheme, because it is bringing in £40 million of investment to Dumfries. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. Duncan MacDonald, do you have any answers to Councillor Dorward on this funding?
Thanks, Chair. As Councillor Dorward, whilst it doesn't obviously feature in this report because it's of end of year report for last year, but certainly I can take away your comment and share that with the flooding team in terms of funding security. I'm sure it's a high priority for them already, but I will take it back to them to ensure that that's carried out.
Thank you. Councillor Hislop.
It's actually on the zero waste park. A note from the paper that part of the MBT is going to be repurposed for dry recyclates. Now, one of the big concerns was that last year we had with regards to insurance of the MBT was fire in the building if we get the disposable vapes. Now, if we have a fire in the building and we've put the other bulking area in there, what's the cost going to be, and have we got a backup plan if that actually happens?
Thank you, Councillor Hislop. Duncan, can you help on this one? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for your question, Councillor Hislop. I don't have specifics on that. I can certainly take that back to the team. I know the discussions around insurance has been heavily discussed and considered, but I don't have a specific answer on I suppose what you're answering there is a contingency plan. If there is an event within that facility, I would expect that will be looked at and has been considered. But I can take that back to the zero waste design team and ask for a response for you on that.
Thank you, Duncan. Councillor Hislop, is that how, if we get back to you on that
fine,
one?
thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Slater.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask the question, how much is it costing to hire Turner and Townsend? Another question is, why are they drilling holes in their white sands now to see if the ground's substantially okay? I always thought you have to drill holes and see if the land's okay in the very early part stage of the project. And because part of the white sands collapsed there and the car actually fell into the hole during the night. So there's a lot of issues. One other issue I'd like to ask the question about as regards the amount of floods that they say hundreds. This is not correct. It's not correct at all, because the majority, if it's cost, you have to define a flood here, but if the water, there's 2 holes in the sandy opening, the water runs out of the car park, that's classed as a flood. If it covers the road, that's classed as a flood as well. And many of these floods could be stopped many, many years ago. I can't go through this project today, but I feel that these questions need to be answered. And the fact that thousands of people have said no to it already. So that's my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. Duncan, these may be questions that may want to be taken offline, but perhaps you can help at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks for the questions. Councillor Slater, I think there must be 3 elements to that there. In terms of the fees for Townsend, no, I don't have those to hand. I'd have to go back to the flood team and ask for information on that to share with you. So I can certainly do that. I made a note to go back to them. The drilling of the holes that you mentioned, so that's the ground investigation works that have been undertaken recently. But that's certainly not the first phase of ground investigation works that were undertaken. There have been several over a number of years. This is a kind of fine-tuning the site investigation, if you will. That's essentially what we've been doing there, just to kind of plug the gaps or any gaps in the overall scheme that might be there from earlier iterations of the design. So essentially that's what that's been. And there was a bit of an issue with a localised settlement in one of the trial pits that was dug. That was down to poor reinstatement by the contractor, which we've taken to task on, and that was reinstated. And we did try to reach out to the person whose car was parked in that zone, and we haven't been successful in reaching them, and any claim that would come in from that party would be dealt with by the contractor. I'm not quite sure about the third question, to be honest with you. You might want to, if you can maybe reiterate that to me. I think you were maybe querying what the cost of a flood event is to the council. Was that the point you were making?
No, it's not the cost of a flood event. It's the fact that if the water ingresses through the sandy opening onto the car park, these are classed as floods. So therefore it skews the actual figures. There is 95% of these floods could have been solved many years ago. I brought companies here they could have done that. Anyway, the fact is, these should not be classed as a flood.
Councillor Slater, can we take this offline?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry.
Because we're not discussing the White Sands project. This is a performance report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Provost. Just a general question. This is an end-of-year assessment on the performance of roads and infrastructure service plan. It's 3 pages deep and no information whatsoever on it unless it's, say, the White Sands project and the Zero Waste Park. I think most members here will be approached by constituents regarding the state of our roads and infrastructure, and we should really be getting performance reporting about that so that we can analyse and assess that and maybe address that through a different forum. But to get 3 pages and nothing on it isn't very helpful, I don't think, Provost.
No, I agree with Councillor Dempster. We could do with some more research and more information. Councillor Dorward.
Thanks for that observation. Thanks for the observation, Vice Chair. But do you guys not see the papers beforehand and can ask for that information to go on in the first place?
Yes, but it would be quite good in future performance reports that we do get a bit more information. Thank you.
I totally accept that, but you have seen the papers, yes? So you have foresight.
Councillor Dempster, do you want to?
I'll not be questioned by anyone. Thanks, Provost.
I'm not questioning, I'm making a statement, I'm asking a question about you have seen the papers before, so you have foresight, and you can ask for more information. It's an observation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorwood. I think in the future we may ask for more information on these reports, but we're accepting this report as it is at the moment. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I might just come in there. Members might be aware, some might be aware, some might not be, but we're actually undertaking another area committee review. Officers are carrying that out over the next few months, so there will be engagement with members on how the performance reports will look in the future to better accommodate what members have been raised at several committees over the last few months around the performance report. So it is being looked at an officer level, and hopefully you'll see an improvement coming forward.
Thank you, Tracy. Councillor Slater?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's a question about, as we mentioned, roads here are local roads. And I must admit, the signage on the roads, the keep left signs and that, many are broken, many are lying on the side and that. And outside the academy, I reported 2 signs which are lying from side to side. That was several months ago. It's in full view of everybody driving past that day. So really, can some of these signs be replaced or repaired? That would be very, very good if they could do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. Duncan, do you have anything just to add to that? Thank you, regarding the road signs.
Happy to take that, thanks Chair, happy to take that back to my roads colleagues in terms of road sign maintenance renewal programmes, and I'll share Councillor Slater's comments on that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. Do we have any further comments or questions from anyone? No. We will now move to recommendations. Members are asked to review the 2023 to 24 12-month summary performance for the Nithsdale area for the 1st of April 23 to the 31st of March 24, as set out in paragraphs 4.3 and 4.4 and appendix. Consider the area-based achievements and developments as detailed in the key achievements section of this report, paragraphs 4.5.1 to 4.5.2, and consider any aspects of performance to be referred to the relevant service committee. Thank you. We now move to item 7. We now turn to the annual assessment for Neighbourhood Services Service Plan 2023 to 2024. Harry Hay is on Teams to answer any questions, and I will now open for member discussion. Do members have any comments? Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Provost. Just on page 87, 4.5.2.11, I know myself and other councillors have worked very hard to have the customer service centre open, and I'm absolutely delighted that it's now opened on the ground floor of the campus with its own door, which it should have had from the very start instead of being on the first floor in the middle of a school. Don't know where that decision came from, but I'm really pleased. I'd just like to put on record thank you to the team that have worked on this and got it out. And just as we read in some of the other points beforehand, we see that the summer reading challenge has increased 91.4%. We've had the Lego clubs and we've had the book bug sessions delivered through customer service centres, and I really, really hope that we see this in our customer service centre in North West. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen. Yes, it's quite a positive report. Thank you. Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. It's really interesting. Just a small question on page 88. 4.6.3, annual number of tourism visits to Dumfries and Galloway. Again, it's across Dumfries and Galloway, and it's mentioning the major festival and event strategy, which has been fantastic in bringing tourists in, so no quibbles with that whatsoever. I think it's great to get more people into the region, any part of the region, being less parochial. It says that the figures are, now we can find them, figures are 10,000 below the council target of 37,500 people, which is a pre-COVID target, mentioning that the Big Bus Hour did not take place, etc., etc. The figures are pretty good, though, given where we are. I would hope they would increase to above the pre-COVID pandemic target. But can I just ask the question, are these tourist figures specifically for, it says major events, and if so, what are the tourist figures for Dumfries and Galloway for last year in general? What's the difference between the major events and normal or ordinary traffic, if that makes sense? Thank you. Happy to get that off table and get it back. I think we should all get that back, but it'd be quite useful to know. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Dorward. Just an interesting point. When we have events, which does bring more people in, how many? Yes, it's a good point. So we could get back to you with that one if that's all right. Thank you. Or would you like to see, Harry, would you be able to bring some information in on that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, as Councillor Dorward mentions, the figures that are contained within this performance report are specifically in relation to those that have been funded through the Council's major festival and event strategy in an effort to try and demonstrate the impact that Council investment does. But absolutely, quite rightly, there are far wider events across Dumfries and Galloway that do a fantastic job as well at bringing people into our region to contribute to the local economy, and those aren't featured in this particular performance report, but I think it would be a very useful exercise to have that further discussion with colleagues in economic development, etc., to make sure that we're clear about almost a helicopter view of the impact of events generally. So very happy to reflect that in future reports. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Harry. Does that help, Councillor Dorward? Thank you. Jade Kirkpatrick, our youth representative.
Thanks, Provost. Page 89 and page 90, Hillview. Oh, sorry.
Hello. I must say it's been great. There's been as much improvement on the numbers of children, young people and adults getting involved in libraries and lectures. My question is, do we know why there's been such an increase? Like, what are you guys doing differently to promote these events?
Thank you, Jade. Harry, would you be able to help? Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. It's possibly just me, but the line broke up slightly just at the key point of that question, Jade, so apologies, but I think what you were asking, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is about what the service has been doing to try and encourage maximum uptake. And I think a point that Councillor Stevenson made really summarises that in terms of ensuring that we understand what customers or current non-customers are actually wanting. And a really good example would be the Northwest Community Campus that originally the facility was on the first floor. It certainly wasn't as accessible or as easy to get into as it is now, and therefore effort was made to change the location, make it more attractive, make it more welcoming, etc. And as a result, usage has increased. So I think one of the really important areas of focus that all colleagues within these services do is really try and make sure that they've got their finger on the pulse in terms of what customers are wanting, trying to identify trends, trying to be proactive at getting customer feedback, for example, and then trying to adapt services to suit needs as much as possible, and that's across all age groups. You know, it's equally important that we look at all age groups to maximise attendance. Thanks very much indeed. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Harry. Does that help, Jade?
Yeah, that's I think it's helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Dempster?
Thanks, Provost. Page 89 and 90, Hillview Leisure Centre. There is an improvement in performance here, and the facility, although it could do with some refurbishment internally, is still a popular feature in Upper Nithsdale. And I don't know why we can't include the outdoor attendances in the figures, given that it's a leisure facility. So just an observation, it is performing well, and I don't, it just, there is a sort of a feeling that it's a negative report when really it's doing well, the facility, and attract many young people with a new upgraded 3G outdoor location. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. Harry, do you have any comments?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just as an observation, you're really pleased with the performance of that facility, and because as the performance report is featuring performance information that was previously established, it doesn't perhaps reflect the current position. So in terms of moving forward with our future performance reporting, we will have the opportunity to include the full extent of leisure attendances that are happening at each of the locations. But I thank Councillor Dempster for his observation. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have it? Councillor Campbell.
Thanks very much, Provost, and good morning, members. Yeah, it's on page 86, the paragraph 4.5.1.2. Customer service continues to successfully support the national programme to provide all 22-year-olds with free bus travel. It gives the figures of those cards issued. However, what is the actual percentage of uptake across Dumfries and Galloway? Is that 1,812 cards issued just purely Dumfries or Nithsdale area, or is it Dumfries and Galloway? And if we can get a percentage, that would be helpful. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Harry, do you have any answers for this one?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, the figures are specific to Nithsdale, but what I'll do just to provide context is I'll ensure that the regional figures for each of the 4 areas and also the composite is circulated for members' information. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. That would really help. Thank you. Councillor Beretti?
Yeah, thank you, Provost. And it was on the back of what Jade asked, and it's on page 94, and it's in relation to number of attendees in swimming pools in Nithsdale, so that's SM36N. Is there a breakdown of the age banding of the participants who go to the swimming pool? Because that would in some way give us an idea as to what those age groups are doing and how many from the various ages. So, for instance, if you're over 60 or if you're over 65 or if you're between 20 and 30, because that would give us an idea as to well-being and health within adults. Are they taking it seriously?
Thank you, Councillor Beretti. Harry, do you have any information on those age groups? Would that be possible?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Beretti. So what we can record is statistics associated with users that are a member of a particular facility. It's clearly a lot more difficult or nigh impossible, in fact, if it's simply a casual pay-to-play user, because it's not something that you ask a customer when they come in. If they're just simply paying to use that facility, it could be a visitor, for example, that just simply comes in for a one-off swim at a facility. But it's an important point from the perspective of the Leisure and Sport Review that's ongoing at the moment across the region, which obviously includes Nithsdale, facilities is that we are trying to get a lot more robust profiling information on the demographics of users, which includes ages, because that's exactly the type of information that would help inform future programming. You know, so that would be, you know, ranging from swimming lessons, more casual public swimming sessions, etc., and just how best we can allocate time to suit demand. So we have got some of that information, but simply because some of the use is casual pay to play, it's impossible to capture it all. But it's certainly something we're very aware of, that we need to try and get a lot more robust detail on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Harry. Yes, Councillor Beretti, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, I think it's encouraging. I kind of expected that it would be a difficult question to ask, because it's not easy to ask a person what age they are, but I do think it is important. And it reminds me of when I go to the supermarket and I may have a bottle of wine, and the customer, till assistant looks at me and says, "Are you over 18? Yes, but I think I do realise, and what Harry's saying, but I do welcome some sort of initiative to try and capture that information.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ferguson.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for letting me in. A couple of questions, Harry. There's actually three little comments in. I think first off, it's nice to see, or it's very good to see actually, the development of some of our long-standing staff. I'm talking in particular here, Anne Rinaldi, who's been with us for a long time now, at 4.5, 2.2, and then Chris Carruthers again, 4.5, 2.5. You know, who are increasing their knowledge with the support of the council, and I think that should be that's a credit to your team. The second thing is just to reiterate what Councillor Stevenson said earlier about the North West Community Campus. Her and I and others have been very vocal in this, and I think I'm hoping that 4.5.2.9 and the 4.5.2.10, right, will mean now that figure, the figures quoted in those sections will go up. I have to say, due to the terrier with a bone attitude that Ailsa Freeman had took to make sure this got sorted and fixed, and you were involved, Harry, personally, I know that, to make sure we got the North West Community Campus customer service centre up and running. So again, just thank you for that. The last thing is, so there are two statements. The last thing is a question. 4.5.2, customer service centres issued dog filling bags, blue badges, blah, 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 and issued 882 food parcels. Where did the food parcels come from?
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Harry, do you have any answers? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And firstly, thank you, Councillor Ferguson, for your kind feedback. I'll make sure that the staff involved are aware of that. Where there are food parcels distributed at any customer service centre across the region, they are provided and or operated by a third party. So we have been approached to use these sites basically as an outlet that then is promoted by a community partner or a third party. So they aren't provided directly by our council. It's simply a location that is used as an outlet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Harry. Did you want to come back in, Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, I think that's my point, though, Harry. It's have you any idea who the third party suppliers are in Nithsdale?
Yeah, through you, Chair. What I'll do is, just to make sure I'm given the most current information, I'll get that out with the meeting and circulate it. Very often they can be seasonal as well, in terms of a particular time of year. Sometimes I'm not saying this is specific to Nithsdale, but I'm aware in other locations there's been occasions where, for example, over the festive period, there's been a specific promoted opportunity as opposed to an ongoing provision. But I'll certainly make sure that information is circulated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Harry. Yes, that would be interesting to hear back. Thank you. Do we have any further comments or questions? We'll now move to recommendations. Members are asked to review the 23 to 24 12-month summary performance for the Nithsdale area from the 1st of April 23 to the 31st of March 24, as set out in paragraphs 4.3 and 4.4 and appendix. Consider the area-based achievements and developments as detailed in the key achievements section of this report, paragraphs 4.5.1 to 4.5.8, and consider any aspects of performance to be referred to the relevant service committees. Thank you. We'll now move to item 8, which is item number 8 on our agenda is the annual assessment for governance and assurance service plan for 2023 to 2024. Key features are around the establishment of the Curator of Ad Litem scheme, the review of polling stations, places, and the refresh to corporate resilience and business continuity arrangements, and it is encouraging to read that the Community Protection Retailer Pricing Project is protecting customers. Sandra Harkness is on Teams to answer any member questions or address any member comments. Do we have any comments or questions? Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. Again, another really good report. And just maybe I'm a bit confused, which isn't odd these days. But on page, if anybody else says it, on page 105, 4.5.1.2 is dealing with Kirkconnell and Kellerholm, and it's good to see that it's included in part of the Borderlands Inclusive Growth Deal Place programme for investment. That's fantastic. Investment is always good in our local communities. I'm just wondering though, my apologies, I'm on the wrong one. My apologies, that's fine. I told you I was confused, so I'm obviously confused. I'll leave that, I'll hold that thought to the next one. Thank you very much. Apologies.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. Do we have any further comments? Councillor Walters.
Just a couple of quick questions. On page 96, the establishment of Curator Ad Litem scheme. I just wondered if we could just clarify what that actually is. And on the next page, page 97, the 4.5.6, the Community Protection Retailer Pricing Project, which I think is a valuable way of exploring food price differences across rural areas. I just wondered who actually is responsible for doing that. Are they council officers or is it an external project? That's my two questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walters. Sandra, can they pass that to you? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and Councillor Walters. I'm afraid the Curator Ad Litem, I won't be able to answer. That would be for my legal colleagues, but I will refer that back and ask them to answer your question on that, if that's okay, Chair. The Community Protection Retailer Project, I can answer because that is directly my team. It is my team who do the purchasing. It's a project done by the Trading Standards team, and it's Trading Standards staff who go out, do the purchasing of the items, do the analysis of it afterwards, and then give the advice directly to the retailers.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Walters?
Thanks, Chair. That answers the second question. If I could just get, yes, and it's listed as one of our key achievements. If I could get the details of the curator scheme, that would be great. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any further comments? Councillor Beretti.
Thank you, Provost. It's actually in relation to what Councillor Walters has said there about that 4.56 on page 97. Is there breakdown of the locations where these investigations are made, and does it change every year? How do they go about that?
Thank you, Councillor Beretti. Sandra?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can't make available the premises because they have, for some of them, been given informal enforcement action, but they have been remedied. But they are changed each year. We focus on local and smaller retailers and convenience stores, of which there are a lot throughout Dumfries and Galloway. I think this year is the third year we've done this project. So what we try to do is get new and different retailers each year to have the maximum coverage over time.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Beretti. Councillor Ferguson?
Thanks very much, Chair. Sandra, it's on exactly the same paragraph again about the secret shopper, for lack of better words. If I remember rightly, in the past, we used to use this information, which was anonymised to a certain extent, to give us an idea of the cost of a 20-item food basket or X number of food baskets across the region. And then that gave us a better idea where the extra costs were, as opposed to supermarket prices and everything else, and it helped with the anti-poverty strategy. Do we still keep that kind of information, or is that too much an ask, or will we have to go away and maybe budget for that in a different way? I'm not too sure. How I'm coming across with this is, I mean, the one there is the washing powder, for example, found then overcharged. If you're in a remote rural little village shop and you're in the same money as somebody who lives next door to a cut price supermarket in Dumfries, for example, then there's no fairness there. You can see the lack of fairness in that. So basic question is this information available in an anonymised version so that we could actually link it in with the new poverty, fighting poverty subcommittee, so that we can actually take that into account as we're looking at different departments' policies on how we fight poverty.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. It's an interesting one. Sandra?
Thank you, Chair. We do have the information. However, I think the report that you're referring to is one that Citizens Advice used to do, because I do recall it, and it did have, for a consistent shopping basket throughout the different localities within Dumfries and Galloway and beyond, I think. It was a Scottish initiative, I believe. However, we do have details of each and every item bought and how much was paid. I think the way we've approached the project so far has not been with a view to creating the data that you're requesting. Therefore, we might lack consistency. So there are a few different officers involved with this. They might be buying slightly different items, and therefore the baskets might not be as accurately comparable. But that is something I can take on board and take back. We can look at what we have got, perhaps analyse the more consistent items between the baskets, and then look to increase the consistency of the baskets going forward, so that we perhaps could produce that information if that was considered valuable.
Thank you. Does that help, Councillor Ferguson?
Yeah, I would think it would, and I think it's probably something that when we have our first meeting of the subcommittee that we should be looking at. And I'm fairly certain with Sandra's support we could we could get a standardised basket so that we get a decent sample. I think that's probably the right way to take this forward. So thanks for the time, Chair.
No, thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Beretti, did you want to come in?
No, coming from that background, I think that's a very valid point that Councillor Ferguson has made, and one of the reasons why I first asked my question was to see the demographics of it, because shops will purchase goods from different suppliers, and those different suppliers will have logistics pricing that impacts how they actually work. So you might have one item in one shop, and then 50 miles away the same item might be 10% more expensive. You can look at that, but unless you actually have the figures, it's very difficult to make those comparisons, as Councillor Fergan has said.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Barretti. Do you have any further comments or questions? Don't appear to have. We will now move to recommendations. Members are asked to review the 2023-24 12-month summary performance for the Nithsdale area for April 23 to March 24, as set out in paragraphs 4.3 and 4.4 and the appendix. Consider the area-based achievements and developments as detailed in the key achievements section of this report, paragraphs 4.5.1 to 4.5.6, and consider any aspects of performance to be referred to the relevant service committee. And be all noted and considered. Thank you. We will now move to item 9. We now turn to our final performance report, the Annual Assessment of Community Services, Service Plan 23 to 24. As always, this report covers a range of services and projects that are vital to helping our communities prosper and thrive. And I am delighted to welcome some of the young volunteers and staff from the Youth Inquiry Service, who are part of Dumfries and Galloway Council's Youth Work Service. Now, they have joined us to share the work that they are carrying out in Nithsdale, and also to hear from a young person who has had support from the service and the impact that it has had on their life. We have Kelly Ross, the team leader of the youth workers, Alison Hall, Youth Work and Com Assisted, Stevie Allison, the young person. Welcome. Would you like to get Kelly?
Thanks for inviting us along today. So we're just going to cover some of the work around the Youth Inquiry Service. So obviously, as mentioned, it's part of the Council's Youth Work Service. But I guess what makes the Youth Inquiry Service distinct is that it's the main hub for young people in terms of information, advice and support. So although that's based within Dumfries, that support and advice goes right across the region, which we're going to hear Alison talk about in a minute. So some of the work that the YES focuses on is some of the main things is our targeted group work programmes. So these are designed around the needs of young people. So for example, I think we heard earlier about the Boys to Men programme that was running in Moffat. We run a range of programmes similar to that within the Youth Inquiry Service that are targeted at working with some of our most marginalised young people. So young folk are able to either self-refer into the programmes, either because they're accessing the service or through promotion, either through schools, social work, other partners, or able to just come along and turn up and get involved in it. So there's a range of programmes that are delivered. There's girls groups programmes, boys groups programmes around health and well-being, and not just around kind of targeted mental health, but around that wider health and well-being of young people. The second part that's probably one of our most crucial parts of our service is our one-to-one support for young people. So that's focusing on our low-level mental health support for young people. There's two elements to that within the Youth Inquiry Service. There's the face-to-face sessions that young people can take part in. Again, they can self-refer, or other agencies can refer young people in. But it is important to say that for all of our services, it's voluntary, so young people choose to take part. It's not something that can be a condition as part of maybe like a school agreement or social work agreement. It's got to be that young people choose to take part, and that's what defines youth work. So we were aware when we were doing one-to-one support that maybe isn't always appropriate for young folk if they're maybe in a more rural location or only within Dumfries. So that support is also available online, which means young folk from across the region are able to access that. We've also got our Youth Inquiry website that hosts all this information, but we've got a question and answer section within that as well, which means any young person across the region might have a question. So where can I access condoms, or where can I get support around domestic violence. The young folk can write a question on that, and within 24 hours they'll have had an answer from a professional youth worker telling them where to be able to get support. So that's a service that's really quite important. In terms of information, that's a big part of the Youth Inquiry Services ethos, is about making sure young folk have got up-to-date and relevant information in this day and age. That is really important because social media plays such a big role within that, and it's sometimes really difficult for young folk to navigate what information is true or what isn't true. So we do a lot of programmes, joint partnership programmes like Do the Right Thing, Operation Safety, where we're making sure that young folk are getting factual access to information so that then they can at least make informed choices about their life. It's not always that they might make the right choices, but at least they're making informed choices. And the final kind of element before I hand over is around our peer educators, which again is really important. In terms of peer educators, what that is where we train up young volunteers around certain subjects or certain topics. So it could be that is around, for example, domestic violence or drugs and alcohol. They then will upskill themselves in terms of that subject, and then will develop programmes and go out and educate their peers within schools and within communities. And actually, quite often you find that young folk are more likely to listen to their peers than maybe somebody my age. So I'm going to pass over to Alison now, who's going to talk a bit more about the detail of some of these programmes.
Thank you. So some of the young people, or a lot of the young people that are accessing Yes, are coming from a range of different backgrounds and circumstances, and are some of our most vulnerable young people. So they're experiencing poverty, domestic abuse, they might be care experienced, identify as LGBTQI+, and other marginalised groups. They're obviously all within the Youth Work Services age range of 12 to 25, and they mostly come from Dumfries kind of town centre or wider Nithsdale, but do access from some of the other areas as well. But obviously our regional programmes and online service make us available and accessible from across the whole region. Some of the targeted programmes that have been running recently, I'll just cover some of them. So there's an awareness arts programme which focuses on doing different workshops around different awareness topics, such as Black History Month, stress awareness, sleep awareness, health, well-being, LGBTI issues, and they then do creative outputs to match those. So they've been doing stuff like making LGBT crochet plushies, inspirational quotes, stress balls and posters and stuff. Happy Feet is our kind of generic health and well-being programme, so it looks at all the different aspects of health. So they'll do workshops on emotional and mental well-being, they'll take part in a different physical activity each week of the programme, and they also cook and eat together a healthy low-budget meal, so that they're getting all the different aspects of health, not just focusing on one form of it. The Your Resilience programme is a registered programme which sees young people work through a 6-week programme aiming to build their confidence and self-esteem and improve their resilience in life by exploring stress and stressful situations and developing coping skills on how to manage those and navigate through them. The Spectrum group is a group for neurodivergent young people, so it gives them a safe space to socialise and learn together, looking at different topics that are important to them and exploring them through different workshops and activities. And then our kind of peer educator stuff would be our digital peer educators group that look at different topics, they learn about them, and then they learn different digital media skills to be able to come up with different social media campaigns or posters and flyers and stuff like that that can then be shared wider with other young people. The Toon is probably our most popular and famous project that we work on. It's the most recognised, which is our interactive issue-based drama production, where again the young people are upskilled in all the workshops and stuff to do with the different topics that will be covered, and then they deliver that at Youth Beats, and they go on tour across the region to visit secondary schools, which will be starting up again in a month's time. And finally, we have the Yes Volunteering programme, where young people are learning valuable life skills in terms of cooking, budgeting, using the washing machine, applying for jobs and stuff, but then being able to share that wider with other young people as well who are coming through the doors. And I'll pass to Stevie.
From accessing Yes, I've increased my confidence as I was a really shy person growing up. It's a safe space for young people with like people from everywhere, so it's really inclusive. And I've learned a lot of information about different topics like drugs and alcohol, hate crime and hate speech, consent, relationships and managing stress. And I've also learned life skills like cooking, managing money and budgeting, applying for jobs, how to write a job application, how to write a CV, sorry, and interview skills. I received one-to-ones through Yes and at school as it helped to get my life back on track when I was struggling with just various different things. The staff are really approachable and you can ask anything and they'll give you like a real answer with no awkwardness and they won't judge you for anything. Yes, it's kind of like a second home because it feels safe and welcoming, and I know that if I have a problem or need support with something that I'm always welcomed there. It's also good to be involved in groups like the peer educators or the Toon, as you get the chance to learn like new skills and share knowledge with other young people.
Thank you. And thank you all so much for coming today. I'm quite well aware of the excellent work that Kelly and Stevie carry out in their duties and things. And also the Toon, which we'll visit during the Youth Beats, which is an excellent exhibition of young people and the work that you do and the things that you're involved in. So, yeah. So thank you. We have Councillor Slater. Would you like to ask a question? Did you?
Yes, I would. The first speaker, I can't remember your name, but you mentioned Operation Safety. Well, we were heavily involved in that in the early days of Operation Safety. It was held at our unit at Heath Hall. We supplied 8,000 square feet for over 3 weeks, and it went on for several years, and there was about, I think it was 1,500 kids. It was all primary 7. I think the reason for that, they went home and told their parents what they needed to do to make their life safer. Yes, we did all the different scenarios: ScotRail, electricity board, hospital, bomb disposal, believe it or not, police, fire, ambulance service, the whole lot. You obviously probably remember that. I don't know. I have some film of that as well, taken a few years ago. So some of these children could be actually married now with families. But that was a great, excellent thing. They did Stranger Danger, which they had a lady, the Heath was still there then, they walked across and the lady would approach them and say, I've lost my wee dog, could you come and look? And 70% of the kids went with the lady to look for their dog. But they did a thing with speeding as well to show how kids, they put a helium balloon up with a weight and the children had to guess where a car travelling at 30 miles an hour would stop, which was very, very good. But it was highly successful. In the end, we had to stop doing it. The reason for that, we ran out of space in our unit. But it was a really high successful, and I hope it continues to this day, and it's really worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slater, for those kind words. Councillor Stitt.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to thank Kelly and the two for the presentation today, and just the Labour group, we reiterate our support to youth services, and I can put in record that they're a credit to the region, Dumfries and Galloway.
Thank you, Councillor Slitton. Second those comments. Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just to add to what Davy said there, I can't speak highly enough of this team, and they've been recognised nationally. It's not just locally. So whilst we are recognising them today, Kelly and others have got national recognition awards for the work that they're doing. So that can only be applauded. And I suppose that couldn't happen without being given the support of their managers as well. So again, it's reflected glory to Harry and to Paul and company. For me, there's two things coming out of this. One is that it's absolutely imperative when we have, because of the restructure of the council, that this team actually have an active input into the subcommittee on anti-poverty and equality stuff. right? Absolutely imperative. So I see Harry's put his picture back up. So I think that that for me would be the biggest thing. And then the second bit of recommendations 2.3, just to expand that from Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing Committee and add in Tracy put the right words in there, the subcommittee looking at anti-poverty and inequalities. I think it's absolutely imperative that this team are involved in that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Harry, do you have any comments on that we can include them in these committees?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Whether it's felt appropriate to include it in the minute or not, but what I would advise, delighted to reassure members that colleague Mark Malloy is very much involved in the Poverty, Inequalities and Housing Subcommittee, and Mark obviously brings a wealth of experience relating to youth work, and I know that through that approach, the views and challenges and issues associated with young people will very much be at the forefront of that. But thank you, Councillor Ferguson, for your kind words and for highlighting that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Do we have any further comments? Councillor Hislop.
Thank you, Chair. It's with regard to page 113. It's number of young people attending youth work services region-wide has seen, according to the key, an improvement, but I would say more numbers. And the Nithsdale one is showing a decline in the numbers. Now, is that a good news story in the fact that the staff are enabling young people to use other services rather than youth services because they're getting more confidence? Or do we have an issue with, say, like transport, where young people can't access the services at certain times because they can't get in or get home again? Or is it just a sort of within statistical acceptability that it's dropped slightly? Or is it a case of we're actually seeing statistics of less people in Nithsdale, or less young people, because there's a drop in young people across the area? It's just, should we be looking to see if there's something we can do to make it more accessible, or are we actually achieving what we want and young people feel now that we don't actually have to use the service as much? I don't know, but it just has that. Why is Nithsdale going down but the other areas are going up?
Thank you, Councillor Hislop. Harry, do you have any answers to that as to why this is happening?
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure Kelly will be able to provide, not wanting to put her on the spot, some insight, but certainly the service, as you'll hopefully have gathered from the presentation, certainly make the service facilities, what is offered, as accessible as possible to all young people. And certainly one of the distinct advantages early on in terms of the arrangements within the new Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing Director, there's always been a really good relationship between youth services and schools, but we're certainly finding that being part of the same directorate, when there are, which inevitably there's always going to be opportunities, there's always going to be things that need to be resolved, we're certainly finding that there's a lot more of a responsive approach to it. And I guess just maybe before I ask Kelly to give any insight or comment, I think it'll be very much dependent upon how the performance information is gathered. It'll be a snapshot in time, and it might not actually capture everything. But if it's okay, Chair, hopefully Kelly can provide any other observations. Thank you.
Thank you, Harry. Kelly, would you be able to add anything to that?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think the long-term trend included events, but that's now reported as a separate KPI, which is why I think we're seeing a slight decline in the numbers there. So overall, the numbers are still roughly the same, but it's just that it's recorded differently now.
Thank you, Kelly. Do we have any further comments or questions? Councillor Dorward.
This is not a question about youth work services, but thank you again for the presentation. I know it's really challenging to talk in public, and if, like me, you make mistakes about what people you might be talking to, is even more challenging. So, Groundhog Day. Back to page 105, 4.5.1.2. It's a question about Kirkconnell and Kellerholm and Borderlands Inclusive Growth Deal. So, what I was saying before is it's fantastic that this is being recognised and investment is going into this area, well known in the area of deprivation. But there's just a couple of questions about two things. Notice that as part of the Regional Capital Growth Fund, Kellerholm received 2.3 million in 2021 from Scottish Government, COSLA and local authorities combined. And it would be useful to know the synergy between that and Borderlands deal. So what's happening to, for example, the Skills and Innovation Centre that was marketed under the Regional Capital Grant Fund? Is that ongoing? Is that being developed? Do we have, what's the difference between development and delivery there? How does that synergise with Borderlands? And are there any concerns we should be looking at, given that 2.3 million has already been invested in that area? How does that, how does that work out? Thank you.
I can pick this up, Councillor Dorwood. So the 2.3 million that was secured through the Regeneration Capital Grants Fund, the cost of the STEM Centre, as they were calling it, Skills and Innovation Centre, exceeded, it was getting to the 5 million point. So they couldn't achieve match funding, so that funding then went back to RCGF, which was disappointing. So we've been working on Borderlands now for 3 years, and we were one of the first communities in Kirkconnell to look at Borderlands, and it's been a long process to get to the point we are. And as you know, our place plan was approved at E&I last year. So then we had to focus on a Borderlands Town Investment Plan, one of the first areas again to put in a Borderlands Town Investment Plan. We submitted that only for Borderlands to say, actually, maybe that's not what we want. And then they reissued the questions that they would like us to then answer. So we had to pay more to consultants to then redraft a Borderlands Town Investment Plan. And I'm pleased to say the Towns team endorsed that on Monday evening. And it's going to the Borderlands Town Investment Partnership and Board on the 25th of October. And then it will come to your next E&I meeting in November. So I think the Towns team would say it's been a long, slow process, but as we laid out the other night, there's still a bit to go, because you need to have a Borderlands Town Investment Plan for each of your priorities to enable you to draw down any funds. And then once you've got that number 2 plan ready, you've got 12 weeks for Scottish and UK governments to agree that those projects will be funded. So it's a very long, drawn-out process. The Towns team are in it for the long run, but it's been a long run to get to where we are, and we've got a bit to go. But they have identified 3 projects: regeneration of the main street, housing for the elderly, and business units and a new ambulance station. You'll notice that the Skills and Innovation Centre has dropped off of there, because it was one project which would have taken all of the Borderlands funding available, because it's over 5 million, and we're looking at circa 3 each community. So we are progressing, albeit slowly, waiting on information from Borderlands.
Thank you. Does that help, Councillor Dorward?
Yeah, thanks,
Or
Fiona.
clear something up?
What, could I come back, please, Chair? Is that
Yes, yes.
Thanks, Fiona. That's really sad to hear that. I think it's indicative of the layers of bureaucracy that surround these things sometimes. I'm not criticising. People have to have an assurance that the money is there and it's going to be spent. I totally understand that from the public sector. It's about spending taxpayers' money wisely. And well done on resilience and determination in keeping things going, because it's really, really difficult these days, and it's really hard. I find that desperately sad that match funding wasn't available at the time. COVID, it's quite challenging. It probably wasn't a major issue. But good luck with the Borderlands one, because it's places like Kellerholm and Kirkconnell that need that money in to redevelop the community. So thanks for the explanation. I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks very much. Well, first of all, I would just like to thank our youth work team for the presentation here. And I'll echo everything that other members say. I would like to go back to page 105 and pick up on I know it's a historic report, but paragraph 4.5.2, which is the community asset transfer. Now, in Ward 9, there's a number of community asset transfers there. Now, I can remember at least 2 of them, the Noble Hill Community Centre, for example, the nurseries and the Victorian greenhouses at Crichton, are 2 that go back to the previous term. We don't seem to be any further forward on that. So although the recommendations is saying consider any aspects of performance to be referred to education, skills and community well-being, maybe that's something that we should try and drive forward. I mean, if communities are not going to take up these assets, and then I think you know, we should have an alternative to that, but they have been long-standing. I don't know if anybody can assist at that moment. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Harry, do you have anything to follow up on that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As Councillor Campbell mentioned, this is, by the very nature of it, a retrospective report up until the end of March. And as always with these things, they have got to be taken forward, obviously through support with the council, but at the pace that the community has got the capacity or the interest to do. But what I'll ensure is that the team on each of the ones mentioned, and indeed any others that are live at the moment within the Nithsdale area, that we just give a more up-to-date snapshot of time following the meeting this morning. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Harry. We also have Liz Manson in the hall today who would like to answer that one too. Thank you.
Just to echo what Harry said, I think the issue is that we go at the pace that the community group wants to go at and has the capacity to go at. But very happy to give you more information in each of the community asset transfers that are in progress. We'll just send it out as a briefing for you, and then you've got that level of detail. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks for letting me back in again, Chair. The last bit I'd just like to highlight here, I think, and that's 4.5.6.2 on page 107. And there's a question at the end of it, because we're getting recognised yet again for the Youth Work Service, the Grow Your Own approach, and a significant number of young and adult volunteers transitioning to paid positions with the council, which is highly laudable. And I remember Kelly telling me that we're probably the youth work staff team were probably the youngest age demographic in the council. And is there any way we can actually find out just exactly what the age demographic is compared to others? Because if this works with youth work, why does it not work with other departments? Now, I appreciate that. It's a bit of a funny question. And just the other thing, Kelly said something there was about potentially the slight drop in numbers. Does that correlate with the previous item in the agenda where we saw a rise in Nithsdale's uptake on leisure and sporting activities, probably getting back after post-pandemic? I think it's maybe a bit of work at the business side they need to take away, Harry, and have a look at that, because we need accurate figures and we need good reasons why things go up and down, especially when it comes to budget setting. So if that was something that could be agreed upon, maybe for Harry or somebody to take away and have a look at, both the age profile and how it works there, it doesn't necessarily work elsewhere. And is it possible to work in other areas? And also this fluctuation in the numbers actually using youth work facilities as opposed to using leisure and sport facilities. Is there a correlation or not? Because we don't want to make that judgment without at least an attempt at getting some data on it.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Liz Manson may wish to comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, so the people strategy that the council agreed last year, one element of that is about making sure that we're addressing the succession planning in our services. And also one of our equality outcomes this year is about making sure that our staff profile is representative of the population in the region. So I think human resources are certainly looking across our statistics, our staffing complement and the age profile, and working to make sure that it is as positive as it can be. So yes, very happy to pick that up. And if there's not something coming forward to the relevant committee soon, I'm sure colleagues in HR would do a briefing.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Do we have any further comments or questions? Before we move to recommendation, I would just like to thank Kelly and Alison for their presentations today, and for Stevie to come along and sharing her experiences with us. Thank you all so much. Much appreciated. We will now move to recommendations. Members are asked to review the 2023-24 12-month summary performance for the Nithsdale area for the 1st of April 23 to March 24, as set out in paragraphs 4.3 and 4.4 in the appendix. Consider the area-based achievements and developments as detailed in the key achievements section of this report, paragraphs 4.5.1 to 4.5.7, and consider any aspects of performance to be referred to the Education, Skills and Community Wellbeing Committee. And we have reviewed and considered. Thank you. We will now move to item 10. Our next report, members, is the monitoring report on the projects which received support from the Nithsdale Area Committee, Tackling Poverty and Inequalities budget. And it is good to see that the budget continues to provide significant impact for our local communities. We have Derek Hextall is on Teams to answer any member questions or address any member comments. Do we have any member comments? We don't. Councillor Slater.
Yes, page 115, 4.3. It's regarding, where are we now, 4.3. A scoring framework consistent that uses for previous discretionary grants. I've had one of the larger food banks write to me recently saying that their scoring was quite low, and maybe I should take that up with the next agenda.
Councillor Slater, I think that's for the next agenda item.
Okay, that's fine.
You can bring it up at the next one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any comments, questions, any further? No. Councillor Campbell.
Thanks, Provost. It's mainly an observation. Page 125, Apex Scotland. We're allocated £10,000 with a number of beneficiaries of just over 1,000. And then we've got on page 130, First Base Agency got half the amounts, and yet the number of beneficiaries was 14,606. So the observation is, are we getting more for our buck from First Base is what we are from the bigger food bank of Apex? Just an observation, but I don't know if anybody could answer that observation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell. Derek, would you have anything to comment on this observation from Councillor Campbell?
Thanks, members. Thanks, Councillor Campbell. The only observation would be around the terminology that's maybe being used. So I think Apex are the number of individuals, so 1,086 individuals, whereas the First Base one you refer to is the number of food parcels, so not necessarily the number of individuals, so it's the number of food parcels. So that may account for the discrepancy.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Do we have any further comments, questions? We'll now move to recommendations. The performance monitoring information from projects supported by the Nithsdale Area Committee Tackling Poverty and Inequalities Fund in 2023 to 24, as referenced in paragraphs 4.8 to 4.10 and detailed in Appendix 2, and that over 18,500 people have directly benefited from the projects supported by this fund, which have drawn over 173,000 additional investment to tackle poverty and inequality in the local Nithsdale area. Thank you. We will now move to item 11. Our final report includes applications for consideration by members for the Tackling Poverty and Inequalities and Equalities budget for 2024-25, along with the officer scoring panel analysis and recommendations. Now, this report outlines the process agreed by this committee in May, including the priority areas for funding, the criteria for applicants, and the scoring framework for assessment. I would like to place on record our thanks to the scoring panel for undertaking the assessments on our behalf and presenting recommendations based on our agreed criteria for member consideration today, in particular to partners in the NHS, the third sector, Dumfries and Galloway volunteers from the Tackling Poverty Reference Group, and council officers. As detailed at 4.3 within the report, the budget available for allocation is £81,791.52, and we are being asked to consider the grant recommendations and how best to utilise any remaining funds following the committee decisions on these. We have Derek Hextall on Teams to answer any member questions or address any member comments. Councillor Dorward.
Thanks, Chair. I think Councillor Slater's hand was up before mine, so if you want to go first, I've not a problem with that. I can wait. It's up to you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. If you don't mind, we'll let Councillor Slater go first. Thank you. Oh, no, can't you? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I brought this up at the previous agenda. I've had a correspondence from First Base Agency asking why they were scored so lowly this time, especially when they're a big supplier to people in the food bank, and how this, how could I say, the scoring actually works. They're obviously concerned that they've got 47.8, very, very low score, perhaps the lowest score. And that's the question I'm being asked from the people who supply the food from First Base Agency. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Slater. Derek, can you answer this one regarding the First Base Agency?
Yes, Chair. I'm just finding it on the... Can I look at their score? Yeah, just to feed back to Councillor Slater, the application was a substantially similar application. Indeed, it was used the same form, although the application form had been updated. However, the scoring panel were minded to accept it, given the importance that this organisation does play in tackling poverty and inequality, and certainly supporting the most vulnerable in our communities. It actually scored more than the application that was presented in the previous year, albeit I do recognise it as a relatively low score in terms of the other applicants that are provided. The full breakdown of the scores are included on page 172, and that was the considered group score from the scoring panel. In particular, it scored low in relation to evidence of confirmed match funding, and the evidence that was able to be provided through community involvement.
Thank you, Derek. Could you supply me with that information in a written form? Can you do that? so that I can go back to first base with the answers. Thank you.
Chair, through yourself, it's included in page 172 on the report. The breakdown of the scores are in your papers, Chair.
So this information is out there and is available. Thank you, Councillor Slater. Yes. Councillor Dorward.
Thank you, Chair. It's a small request, and it's maybe, I'm a councillor for Locker, but it's concerning the request on page 157 and Kirkmanhole Parish Hall Committee request for Wi-Fi connectivity. They've had their...
Sorry, Linda. My fault.
They've requested £250 for internet connectivity for the village hall, and according to the committee, the team that looked at this, they didn't meet the criteria, so they've got nothing. Now, I know that the request for digital connectivity in the application looks at resilience, but the hall's used for lots of other things as well, and if I dare say, Chair, you will know this as well, so I'm roping you in here kind of a wee bit, but it's also used for lunch clubs and meeting places for the elderly, and digital connectivity for these individuals is absolutely vital, and digital connectivity is something that's a priority for awarding these grants. So if I may crave the indulgence of this committee and ask that Kirkmanhole Parish Hall is given the £250 for this digital connectivity, given that they are going to get match funding from the Community Council, that will actually allow them to put the hall on the internet, which is fantastic for all the people that use it. It isn't just about resilience. Resilience is important. I think it's also about community resilience and inequality, because our rural areas, it's really challenging, speaking as one who attends the hall, to get connected to the internet if you're trying to do anything. So I think for the amount of money that it is, I would hope that people would agree that we award the £250 to Kirkmanhole Village Hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. Yes, I am aware of this situation, and it is used for resilience use as well, so where they do need connectivity in the hall. So perhaps I can pass that one to you, Derek. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Dorward. Well aware of the issues within this particular hall as well. Unfortunately, the application that was scored by the panel was focused towards resilience activity, not tackling poverty and inequality, and that is why, unfortunately, it has scored or been recommended for nil award. However, it's completely at members' discretion. It's not at officers' discretion to recommend that, so it's completely within the hands of members to agree any allocation.
Thank you, Derek. I would like to propose that we put this forward for recommendation.
Second,
point of order, Chair.
Second that, Chair.
Councillor
order,
Dorward,
please.
can you repeat that, please?
It's Councillor Ferguson with a point of order.
I second that, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Ferguson.
We've been asked to speak as per the chat. I've been asked to speak. It's you can see in the chat between item 10 and item 11, before Tracy put item 11 in, we'd started item 11 and I had asked to speak then. And there are people getting taken from the hall and I'm being asked to wait back here. It looks as though I've been forgotten about. So when am I going to get to speak?
Councillor Ferguson, apologies, it hasn't actually come up on here, but
Chair, I'll second that, because I've been watching the screen there and it's never came up with a hand against Andy's name or anybody else's.
No,
it's not a hand. It's actually in, and it's ticked there as being received by the system. So it has been received. My speak please, and a little tick beside it. It sits between item 10 and item 11 of Tracy Sonko's entries.
Apologies, Councillor Ferguson. We seem to have somehow that seems to have got missed on the screen, and there doesn't appear to be a hand coming up on that. Would you like to speak now, perhaps?
Right, there's two things in. Okay, yes, I will. I'm sympathetic to Linda's plea about the £250 for internet connection. But what I'm really worried about here, okay, let's start at the beginning. I'm eternally grateful for the panel who look at the scoring for us, because I remember the bad old days, as one or two of this committee will, when we were sitting for hours and hours and hours going over individual applications, and we've taken that away and made it much more professional. So I get that, all right. And my problem here is that for the last, I think it's at least the last 3 years, this fund has been underutilised every single time, and this is by far the largest carry forward that I can see. I mean, we're talking over £21,000 unallocated this time. That flags up problems for me. It flags up the potential for somebody to say, well, you don't need all that budget because you're never using it all. What I think here is we've got a number of organisations in here who've been all deemed to be favourable or agreeing with the criteria for allocation of an award. Right? We have some who aren't. The one I'm prepared to accept is the one with the village hall, because digital connectivity is part of it. And at the end of the day, the scoring panel is a recommendation, and it's up to members to make the decision who they think should get the money. All right. So what I'm proposing is that all those organisations that met the criteria and were given a grant award in the first instance actually be awarded what they asked for as a 100% grant, and the £250 for the digital connectivity for the village hall. Okay, so we need to add that on. If we did that, it would mean the carry forward would be somewhere in the region of, give or take a pound or two, £7,500, which to me is far more acceptable than carrying forward £21,000 on anti-poverty fund, because that to me is wrong. And I keep coming back to this. I think this is probably the third, maybe even fourth year we've been doing this, and every single year we've got an underspend. We're probably at the maximum number of organisations who are involved in the stuff that actually meets the criteria we've agreed. I take all that on board, but I think, given that the age we're living in right now and the current state, we know that electricity is going up, we know that heating is going up, all the other things, we know the cost of food's going up, and a lot of these applications are historical, right? They've been in for a wee while now, right? They're not just, didn't come in yesterday, they come in a few weeks or months ago, and for me, I'm happy to move that we actually award all those who met the basic criteria the amount that they asked for, so that means we've got the ones there. That means first base would get 10,000, Heath Hall, which I think is a very good project, 9984, DG Voice would get 4,000, and the Baptist Church would get 7,020, and the YMCA would get 7,171. I make that come to £73,897.88, plus the 250 that I'm prepared and I agree we should add into there, which would actually mean we would have a residue to carry forward was just around roughly £7,500. And I'm looking for a seconder.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Can I just bring in Derek at the moment? Thank you. Derek?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Ferguson. Yeah, as you stated there, the scoring panel are making recommendations based on your committee agreed criteria, and it's absolutely for members to determine how they wish to allocate that. The only bit of clarity I would seek, Chair, through yourself from Councillor Ferguson, is the one on DG Voice. Now, obviously, in your papers, members, and I'm just trying to find the page. It is page 165 and 1 to 167. The scoring panel's recommendation was to remove what it considered to be ineligible items, and therefore reducing the total project cost to 7,000, not 12,000. That is detailed in 165, page 165. And the grant request, therefore reducing that to £5,000. So just to get clarity on whether Councillor Ferguson is suggesting that should be the 5,000 request of eligible expenditure, or whether is suggesting it should be the original £10,000 which the applicant asked for. Other than that, and adding in the £250, there would be sufficient budget for members to agree that and still consider a small grant scheme if that is where members wanted to go.
Thank you, Derek. Councillor Ferguson, do you want to come back?
Yeah, I accept Derek's explanation about DG Voice, and I'm happy to go along with that, because obviously if there's a portion of it, I've obviously that bit slipped my mind, or I've not picked it up, then I'm happy to go along with Derek's recommendation on that, and the panel's recommendation on that one. But the rest, that's, I think, where we should be. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. I'll now bring in Councillor Walters.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'd be happy to second Councillor Ferguson's proposal, because we've discussed this amongst ourselves, and there does seem to be some concerns about the scoring system. Although we're grateful for the panel for taking this work on, there do seem to be some difficulties. One of the ones that came up for the first base application, for instance, which is on page 172, which Derek has already pointed out, was on the page 170, evidence of confirmed match funding was 4 out of 10. And when I looked at the papers from last year, with a very similar application, as was pointed out, evidence of match funding was 15 out of 15. And the issue seemed to be to do with a change in saying what is confirmed funding. And I know that we agreed the outline of the scoring earlier. This committee agreed it earlier, but I don't remember there being any big discussion about whether we should be taking confirmed, or whether we should be taking donations out as not being confirmed. So that was just one issue that we had. So, like I said, I'd be happy to second Councillor Ferguson's proposal. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Walters. Councillor Hislop.
Thank you, Chair. Happy with the proposals that are going forward. The one thing that sort of struck me was if there were other avenues that would have been more appropriate for, say, the likes of the Kirkmahoe Hall one, why haven't we helped them actually apply for it and get that money in, so that we could have reported here that actually we found another route, and therefore it could have freed up money somewhere else to do something. But that, and I must admit, one of the scoring panel quotes which sort of would suggest that we might need to think about their wording. It was on the food bank one, first base. Organisation, how they're evidencing that they're bringing people out of poverty, noting numbers are increasing from previous years. I suppose if you give them nothing, they'll have no numbers, so they've actually done well, but that isn't actually the fact. I think that needs to be, there's no evidence there. Rather than saying noting numbers are increasing, it might be more, there's still a requirement for them. So I think we need to consider that rather than just saying numbers are increasing, which would suggest that they weren't helping, they were actually hindering. But other than that, I'm happy with the proposals from Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Councillor Hislop. Derek, would you like to add anything to that? Before we...
Just to say that, at the point the report was written, that these are simply recommendations being made to this committee. So it's not within our gift at the moment to help any organisation apply, because we're not sure whether they are going to get funded or not. However, we do say in the report that any applicant that is unsuccessful, then they will be supported by Third Sector Dumfries and Galloway to review any other avenues of other funding opportunities which may be available. In terms of the wording that Councillor Ferguson, Hislop's apologies, refers to, it's certainly not the intention of the scoring panel to suggest that what they're doing at first base is not worthwhile. It's simply a reflection that the scoring panel's view on how they approached the applications was around the name of the fund, around tackling poverty and inequality, and not simply helping to mitigate. That if that is incorrect in the approach, then it's certainly something we can beef up in the guidance and criteria and the training we do with the scoring panel. But the comments were simply to reflect that the scoring panel's view was that there was an increase in numbers, and whether that was reflecting the increased need, or indeed whether it was looking at the sticking plaster approach as in terms of the emergency response that this organisation does, and how that then fits with the criteria for this particular fund. But more than happy to pick this up going forward, and I assume will be a future members seminar to reflect any future fund that may come out of this area committee.
Thank you, Derek. Councillor Hislop, does that answer or does that help your question?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Provost. I'm kind of concerned about the direction of travel some members seem to want to take. I remember the heady days, and I'm sure Councillor Hislop will remember it, when we used to have a bun fight every year at area committee about where funding should go. And over the years, we've fine-tuned that to a situation where we get professionals to assist us by offering us evidence of suitability. And it seems that we're going to go back immediately to the heady days, so we'll just lob in a figure and see how we go. If you look at page 170, which is Thornhill Old School, the scoring panel comments are, it includes core costs totalling 66%, which breaches the eligibility criteria, therefore recommended for an award. Now, clearly, if that had been down to 50%, it would have been in the mix for an award. But this proposal gives them nothing because it's had a nil recommendation from the scoring panel. So here we are abandoning some of the scoring panel's recommendations, but not others. We should be maybe picking up everybody who features on this list and giving them a share of the cash, which would be absolutely fair, because they've all qualified in some way to appear in the papers. So I think it's extremely unfair the way this approach is being taken. And I think we should have a review at the seminar on how we take things forward in the future, but in the meantime, go with the table 1 on page 150 and option A. And I would add, whilst the money isn't maybe spent on the first round, the fund is completely utilised every year, and a lot of other groups that support people in need across the whole Nithsdale area receive small amounts that allows them to deliver very useful and helpful support to people that need it without this major investment of 10 grand and 9 grand. So I'm only need 1,000 or 500. And I'm sure Councillor Dorward's £250 appeal could maybe fit into that other area if that's what members were inclined to do. But I put that as a proposal, Provost, because I don't think it's fair that it's random. We'll just lob some in and leave the others to hang. It's unreasonable, it's unfair, and there's not been an impact assessment made on the ones that have failed, because we're only picking half of the recommendations for the scoring panel and not the other half.
Thank you, Councillor Dempster. I feel as if we're going forward for a review on the funding, perhaps that would be best to wait until we've had that review and seminar and leave recommendations as they are. and we can then... Sorry, Councillor Dorward.
Chair, there's been a proposal and a seconder, so I think that's as it stands, and obviously Councillor Dempster's suggested a different way forward, so we have to decide how we want to go as a committee. I would suggest that's how, no?
Thank you, Councillor. We'll continue with speakers for the moment. Councillor Dorward, you're down there.
It's basically to, to replicate slightly, I mean, we are where we are. I agree with the proposal as it stands at the moment, and a great deal of discussion was had between various elected members about this. But it's not to criticise the panel or the work that they've done, because they were going by the criteria agreed. Now, that's never an exact science, and it's always really challenging. So please, Derek, take back to the panel that that isn't the case, because they've done a lot of hard work on our behalf. I think this is an exceptional instance. We're living in exceptional times as well, where we have a vast amount of deprivation and poverty across the region. But I think the idea of a seminar and a review of criteria is a really good one, because what we don't want is to encourage or to discourage applicants from putting in less than robust applications in the future. Perhaps when, there might be a stage before that when they're received, that we can go back to them. And I think we have with some cases, I've seen this as well, we've gone back and said, we shouldn't be doing this, but they've done it anyway, in terms of the application, because it doesn't meet the criteria specifically. But we need to go back and discuss with people. And also, I think it was Councillor Hislop that said, if they don't meet the criteria at all, can we advise ASAP and put them in touch with folk that can help them take things forward, be it for £250 or £10,000 or £15,000, whatever that is. So I think, fully support the proposal made by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Walters. But we need to do a review of where we go in the future with this, because we do need robust grants applications coming in. We can't just, I think that this might give the wrong idea to some agencies who have asked for grants. It's not. We're not saying that you can't just put in anything and you get money back from Nithsdale councillors. That isn't the case. So we need robust applications coming in, but also a review of the criteria and guidance for the panel, and perhaps some way of discussing that before it gets to the committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Dorward. Derek, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Dorward. And that's really appreciated, your feedback. I'll certainly pass that on to the scoring panel members, who are all aware that ultimately the decision is for members to make, and that they are simply making recommendations. So please take that assurance on board as well. And also, just to provide reassurance to members, we do, where things are clearly ineligible in terms of the criteria, we do feedback to the applicants and give them the opportunity to review their application before it is then uploaded to the scoring panel. So as well as our governance checks, which are carried out by business support, we then do a lead officer check in terms of the criteria for this particular fund, and anything that is completely ineligible, we do feedback to applicants at that time, giving them the opportunity to review, and as you refer to, some decide not to and to continue to the scoring panel based on what they currently have. But more than happy, as we ordinarily do, we would normally hold a seminar if future funds are allocated to this particular fund, and give us the opportunity to review it fully during a members' seminar, and then bring forward recommendations for criteria, etc., to a future meeting of this committee.
Thank you, Derek. Councillor Slater.
Thank you, Chair. A few minutes ago, I thought I seconded Councillor Ferguson's proposal. Unfortunately, my mic wasn't working, but I believe you would hear what I say. I just wonder about that, but I do support this recommendation. Such. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Slater, the Chair actually brought in Councillor Walters at the time, and he seconded Councillor Ferguson. Thanks.
Councillor Ferguson.
Yeah, thanks. And Derek, thanks for clarifying what happens to those who the first screening showed they didn't meet the criteria, and the involvement of you and your team to actually engage with those people. And just drawing members' attention to 4.3, in actual fact, it's not this budget that is used in full every time. It's the discretionary budget. We carried forward almost £5,000 this year from last year. So that's the factual situation regarding that, and I stand by obviously as I've said before, and happy to go to vote if it takes that.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. And I will second Councillor Dempster. We have a proposal on the table. Sorry. Yes.
Point of order, did you not propose the £250 go to Kirton seconded by Councillor Dorwood, and now you're going to be seconding Councillor Councillor Dempster?
Yes, but that was going through. If we were going with the recommendations. What was your...
My proposal was simply table 1 and 150 and option A, and what I suggested was that Councillor Dorwood's request for £250 could be taken to the option A, and officers can consider that at that time. That was my proposal.
I'll apologise, Jim, I never heard that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor State. So I will second Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Chair. So we have a motion proposed by Councillor Ferguson, seconded by Councillor Walters. Correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Ferguson, but so that's to provide those that have been provided awards within Table 1 to increase their awards to 100%, and that's confirming that DG Voice is the eligible 5,000, and to allocate £250 to the Kirkmahoe Parish Hall Committee. And the amendment is proposed by Councillor Dempster, seconded by the Chair, and that is to go with the recommendations as detailed in the report and at Table 1. Is that right?
And option A for the
Yes.
remainder of the funds.
Thank you.
Option A, yeah.
Option A.
Thank you. Chair?
Amendment.
Vice Chair?
Amendment.
Councillor Barretti?
Motion.
Councillor Blake?
Amendment.
Councillor John Campbell?
Motion.
Councillor Dorward?
Motion, please.
Councillor Ferguson?
Motion, please.
Councillor Hislop?
Motion.
Councillor Malcolm Johnson?
Motion.
Councillor Jordan?
Motion, please.
Councillor Little?
Motion, please.
Councillor Lowe?
Motion, please.
Councillor Slater?
Motion.
Councillor Stevenson?
Motion, please.
Councillor Stitt?
Motion.
And Councillor Walters. Councillor Walters?
Motion, please.
Thank you. So the motion is carried 13 votes to 3. So the awards will be increased to 100%. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tracy.
Sorry, Chair. Just before you move to 2.3, I wonder if, I'm not putting Derek on the spot, but if he's got an accurate figure of what would be remaining in the budget following the decision at 2.2. Thanks.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thanks very much, Tracy. So the total allocations based on the inclusion of the £250 for Kirkmahoe would be £75,147.88, which would leave £6,643.64. And can we just confirm that members also agreed option A for the remainder of that fund?
Yes, that's right, Derek. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll now move to item 12, and there's no other business. I will thank you all for your attendance here today. Thank you.